Hello, everyone. My name is Marius Tănescu. I want to say welcome back to my channel. Today, we are going to have a very, very special conversation and very important topic to discuss. And my goal today is not only to learn about blockchain and understand better what blockchain is doing, but most importantly, I want to understand how blockchain is going to impact the business world, because I truly believe blockchain is here to stay, and blockchain is going to change the business the way we know. And I don't have anybody better than my special guest today, which is Tony Swantek. I really appreciate having you here as my guest. I know you are very, very busy, and I really appreciate and thank you so much.
Oh, it's always good to connect with you, Marius. Appreciate you having me on, man. Excited to share blockchain with the world if we can.
You have a huge experience in business. Like all your life, you've been an entrepreneur. This is what you did. Like you built so many businesses. I don't certainly I don't know how many businesses, but I know a lot. Maybe you don't remember how many you did it.
Probably not, yeah.
But I know you did it very successfully, because it's not easy to build a business, even to take a business to a few $1,000,000. Not to say that you took businesses to Inc. 500, and in the last 5 years, you took 3 businesses over $1 billion. That's huge. And I don't know personally. I have no idea. I don't know any other person that had such a success in business. And that's why I'm really excited to have you here, because with your knowledge, with your experience, with your background and success, this will help us a lot to understand how you see the business in future impacted by blockchain.
Sure.
But before we are going to talk about that, I want you to tell us a little bit more about your experience in business, because it's huge, it's phenomenal, and I want to learn more and I want to understand more what you did so far.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I honestly didn't know I would end up being an entrepreneur. I went to school, played college tennis at a small Division I and called Robert Morris in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's where my dad was from. And so my grandparents were there, aunt and uncle. And so it was kind of cool to be close to family. I grew up in Kansas. But college, I studied finance and economics, and didn't really know what I was going to do. Thought maybe, getting into investment banking is kind of what I was probably looking into and targeting. Maybe end up working on Wall Street eventually, sooner or later. And I ended up getting involved in the network marketing industry, actually, and doing sales and marketing of water filtration products, health and wellness products, and did that for a few years. And then I moved into telecommunications for a few years, and then ended up in the blockchain space over there, dealing in cryptocurrency trading software. And I ended up building some big organizations. My biggest team was over 1 million people in 167 countries. And so we built a pretty big network in one company. And then I started to use the success, the money that we had made in that industry to diversify, and started different companies, from like a t-shirt company. It was kind of cool. To a restaurant delivery service. Really, that was the first kind of Inc. 500 company that we had built up, kind of like an Uber Eats or a DoorDash, and did a lot of deliveries. We're in 300 cities doing millions of deliveries. Yeah, we ended up exiting a third of that business to a company called Eat Street out of Madison, Wisconsin. And then we merged with a company called Delivery.com, which is owned by Cantor Fitzgerald, kind of the big investment bank on Wall Street. But that company was called My Town To Go. And so in Wichita here, where I'm in Kansas for like two months or so. I spend most of the year in Puerto Rico is where we live, but we're at our house in Kansas for a few months during hurricane season. I try to avoid that, but here in Kansas, it was Wichita To Go here. We had Ames To Go in Ames, Iowa, Des Moines To Go in Des Moines, so we kind of were local flavor, I guess. But that was a very successful business for us. And then really the largest company we've ever created. My wife, myself, my CPA started an accounting firm called Jorns and Associates. And that was the company literally within our first couple of years. We started that July 1 of 2021. Within our first couple of years, we'd done over $10 billion in tax credit filings for our clients, with over $2 billion in receivables. And so that was certainly by far the fastest I've grown a company and the largest I've ever grown a company. And so we've got in the neighborhood of 50 businesses, I think we've started. We probably run over 20 of them right now, very diverse from marketing. We have oil wells, real estate. We have a vacuum pump company. So like, I don't even know what that was, but I got a buddy that we partnered with and got into that space. But like, if you ever see like a hot dog package with no air in the package, that's vacuums that pump out that air. If you've ever, like Boeing is a client of ours, Spirit Air System, like on wings of aircraft, when they're putting rivets in, they use vacuums to hold the wings in place. If you've ever had surgery or been into a clean room in a hospital, Via Christi, all the Via Christi hospitals around the country, that's a client of ours. So the vacuums that kind of suck the bacteria out and create clean rooms. So we got a lot of clients in that business. But blockchain is really, I'd say, taken over most of my time. I'd say 95% of the time I spend working is working in blockchain right now.
Wow, impressive. We are going to go there, but with your success, maybe you can help us understand what's the difference between somebody that barely makes in the business and a millionaire and a billionaire, like somebody that takes a business from zero in 2021 and is taking to $10 billion in 2 years, 2.5 years. That's something special. Like it's not, you cannot find anybody that can do that. It's huge. It's almost like impossible to understand what a person can do to take a business to that level. Like, do you see what are the ingredients? Or
yeah, I mean, for me, I think it wasn't necessarily a focus on let's build $1 billion business. Right.
Never. That was not in the.
No. I think for me, what ended up happening, as you mature as an entrepreneur, you start different businesses, or maybe you start one business, but as you're building, you start to learn, what works, what doesn't work, and a few shifts in my philosophy ended up creating more and more success. And it was little shifts. Like, I think success principles don't change, like the same things that Andrew Carnegie used to create US Steel, or Carnegie Steel, I guess it ended up JP Morgan, helped buy him out. And I think he was the first billionaire because of the US Steel transaction. But Rockefeller, with Standard Oil, Henry Ford with Ford Motor Cars. I think success principles, same thing Alexander the Great used, the same thing Jesus Christ used to create the church. The success principles don't change, right? Like they're pretty standard. I think philosophically, the way you go about building businesses, there's certain tweaks you can make. And one of the first things I did that started to lead me to more and more success was shifting away from my level of success and worrying about, whether it's my commission checks or my overrides, to looking at the people I was working with and trying to empower leaders and really duplicate leaders. And so that was kind of the first major shift that started leading me to more and more success. The next shift, I think, that led me from creating $1 million companies to being able to create $1 billion companies was really a couple different things. Number one, the focus moved completely to really adding value. And I didn't care necessarily whether I got paid for it or not. A lot of times it was, how can I help this company, this person, this individual, and add value to their lives, to their company, to their business, whatever it might be. And laser focus. I think reading some of Richard Branson's books really helped to shape that philosophy for me. I don't know if you've been on a Virgin cruise or a Virgin flight or anything, yes, or Virgin hotels, but I don't know if there's an entrepreneur on the planet that's more customer centric than Sir Richard Branson, and so he's definitely somebody that helped shaped me philosophically on how do we create that customer experience that, and now it's not like we're taking them on a cruise with my accounting firm, like, but we wanted, at the end of the day, we wanted clients that utilized our products or our services in any of our companies to come back a week later, a month later, a year later, a decade later, and go, you know what? I would have paid triple what I paid for that service or for that product, because what it did for our business or what it did for my wife or what it did for my family. Like, we want that type of raving fan when they're done utilizing our products or our service. So we want them to come back over and over again. Or if we have a new product or a new service that we offer, we know that they're going to be a client of ours because they already have had such good results with the service that we offered them before, whether it was an accounting service, whether it was a vacuum pump, whether it was delivering them food, whether it was a restaurant we were getting food from to deliver and paying those restaurants and having a great relationship. And so the focus really turned to that client experience and make sure we're adding value. I kind of ask 3 questions before I start a company in any industry. Number 1, can I add value to the client first and foremost? It seems like common sense, but certainly we've bought products or services from people that maybe didn't have that at the top of their list. There's definitely, that product was made in China and it broke the next day after I got it. That happens. And I mean, and that's their business model. And again, I'm not one to judge people here and there, but I can't sleep at night if I knew, our products were garbage or our service was garbage. At the end of the day, we wanted to make sure, number 1, we can add value to the client. The second question we ask is, can we add value to the sales force, the people that are bringing us the clients? And then third, can we add value to the employees or the contractors that are supporting the sales staff and servicing those clients? And if we can check off those 3 boxes, then we can move forward with a business. So
Everybody's
that was
happy. Everybody's happy.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, you've got a lot of people that are excited about your business, about your company, and the client base, the employees, the sales force. Everybody's pretty excited about what you're doing. Then the other shift that I made to really go from that building $1 million company or multi-million-dollar company to building my first company that did over $1 billion, it really delved into laser focusing on revenue generation. Once I know I'm adding value to the client, then it's just a massive race to how many clients and how much revenue we can generate. I was always naturally good, I think maybe with my background in finance and economics, at managing capital and managing cash flow. I've never taken on investors for any of the companies I've started. The biggest company, Jones & Associates, I started that with $4,000 out of pocket and started the company and ended up utilizing, we had customers pay a deposit to do their tax credit filings. And that deposit funded the growth of the company, hired all our tax attorneys, our CPAs. We ended up with over 1,000 employees and contractors between offices in Kansas, New York, Mississippi, Ohio. And then I think we had people remote in all 50 states as well. Wow. And so, at the end of the day, we were able to manage cash flow, no problem. But if you don't have any cash flow to manage, it's kind of irrelevant. And so that's why the focus on revenue was so important. If I know I'm bringing the clients an amazing product or service, and at the end of the day, we want to be able to remonetize that relationship by continually adding value. And so we know we can go back to them with the next product or the next service. And so, laser focusing on revenue. Revenue solves a lot of problems for a lot of entrepreneurs. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are worried about what their logo looks like, how their website's designed. I hired my web guy. We had that thing up and running in under 24 hours. And that was probably the big expense out of the $4,000. Maybe I spent $3,000 for my web guy to develop it. And then, we were off to the races.
$1,000 to register the company.
Yeah. I mean, I paid, that was I think we did out of Wyoming initially. We got so big, we actually had to register in all 50 states now. The accounting firms registered in all 50 states. And unfortunately has to pay taxes in a bunch of those states. It is what
Obviously, it takes a special person and a special vision to be able to take a company like that from $4,000 and make billions of dollars with that company. Now you are spending, like you just said, you are spending 95% of your time in blockchain. Why you did that change? Like what made you make that shift and right now focus your vision and efforts and time and everything 95% on the blockchain space?
Yeah, I think there's a few different factors that I would have to discuss that kind of, for lack of a better term, factored into that decision. One, I had friends that had been involved in blockchain for a long time. I had been in cryptocurrency for a while. I started, through our LLCs and trusts and things, getting Bitcoin back in 2013, I think it was. And then ended up, really trading aggressively in the cryptocurrency space back in 2017, which was really good timing. Cryptocurrency was on its way up. Blockchain tech, I did not care about. I actually looked at it like cryptocurrency, blockchain, it's all the same thing. Bitcoin, blockchain, it's one and the same. As I've become more educated, I realized that's like saying email and the internet are the exact same thing. It's like, well, you use the internet to send emails, but you can do a hell of a lot more than just send an email with the internet. Obviously you can do meetings like this. You can watch a show on Netflix. You can pay your credit card bill. There's a ton of things you can do. So blockchain is that diverse, compared to just cryptocurrency. And so I started to really dig into it. It was 2018. A friend of mine had started a project in the blockchain space called Gala Games. Mm-hmm. And it ended up in 2021. It was the #1 performing cryptocurrency in the world in 2021. He made over $4 billion off of that project in about 36 months, a little over 36 months, probably a little over 3 years. And I ended up on the sidelines for that. I won't get too in depth today, but I ended up watching this all happen, and several of my friends do extremely well. And I just chalked it up as a missed opportunity. I unfortunately it wasn't the first, and it won't be the last. But it's life. You learn, right? And yes. So I started building my different businesses and continue to build different businesses. And then in 2023. That friend reached out to me that had made over $4 billion. That project had a market cap peak at like 40 billion. And so I just saw what was possible there. And at that time, I ended up meeting with some people that were working in projects. I remember there was a banking blockchain my friend had put together, and the CEO, her name's Kathy Roberts, and she was one of the original founders of Discover Card. And she was the first president of Discover Bank. And she spent probably 30 minutes with me explaining to me why she got involved in blockchain. Because at that time, it was a very unfriendly environment. The Biden administration, that SEC was not really friendly to blockchain or cryptocurrency. And so, banking and blockchain are kind of like oil and water. They don't really mix. They don't go together. And here's one of the more influential bankers, certainly of my lifetime, that I have a credit card processing company. That's one of our businesses, pretty big business. And so I knew who she was from that industry. She didn't know me. I wasn't that important, but I knew her. And she just said, listen, I believe that blockchain technology over the next 5 to 10 years will make everyone on planet Earth bankable.
Wow.
And she spent probably 20, 30 minutes explaining why she believed that. And for folks that are brand new to blockchain, maybe you've never heard of blockchain, at its purest form, if you look at like the Bitcoin blockchain network, what it does, in its purest form, is anyone on the planet, anywhere in the world that has access to internet and has a computer or a phone, this is basically a computer now in our hands, and can get online, you can set up a wallet for free and you can start participating in that financial system. which I think people take for granted, the current financial system around the world, but there are well over 1 billion people that don't participate in that financial system around the world because they can't. There's people outside of my neighborhood in Wichita, Kansas, that probably can't open a bank account. There's certainly people in Puerto Rico, where I live most of the year, in San Juan, that can't open a bank account. There's people in Las Vegas. There's people in Chicago that are not able to open a bank account. And at the end of the day, the amount of opportunity they will miss out on by not being able to participate in the world's financial system, it's hard to fathom how much.
And you said 1 billion people, they don't have a bank account?
That's just a guess. I guess we could probably get online and ask, but you got to think,
that's a lot.
Different villages in Africa, India. I'd imagine. If we look, I guess maybe I can go to Chat GPT while I'm on your deal. I think there's 8 billion people on the world. I know there's 5.5 billion that are online. So there's a lot of people that are online, but that also means there's 2.5 billion people that aren't online at all. And so you got to think that's a lot, that probably out of that 2.5 billion that can't get online, they probably can't open a bank account, a pretty good chunk of them. So that's just a guesstimate of mine.
Yeah. That's very interesting. You are curious to see how many people they don't have.
I was going to see what Chat GPT says real quick while I'm on with you. But yeah, and who knows? I'd probably have to do a little bit deeper dive. But it says about 79% of adults worldwide have a bank account. It says an estimated 4.2 billion adults worldwide currently hold a bank or mobile money account. That leaves 21% of adults, or roughly 1.12 billion adults, without a formal financial account. So it listed as the unbanked population. So I guess my guess in the wind was
you're right,
close. Yeah, I guess I was a little low. 1 billion is a little low. 1.12 billion according to ChatGPT, and their stats are from the World Bank. So I imagine they're pretty darn accurate.
And what exactly does blockchain for the businesses?
I think once you look at blockchain technology as a whole, what it does in essence, I mean, certainly, it can make the world bankable, which is why Kathy Roberts got involved. But I think there's more to it than even that. I think blockchain at its core creates trust and transparency. And if you look at the internet, and you say, okay, the internet allows us to share information worldwide, globally, real time. You don't need a third party involved. That would close what I would call the distance gap for the planet. The world's certainly a much smaller place. You're in Chicago, I'm in Kansas right now, and we're on a meeting and having a conversation. The world's much smaller than back when I was younger, and we'd have to do a long distance phone call to have this conversation. And to get that information out to the world, back when I was younger and you were younger, you'd have to have a TV station if we wanted people to see us. If we wanted people to hear us, you needed to get to a radio station. You always have to go through that third party. So the internet makes the world smaller. It closes the distance gap. It allows the share of information worldwide very quickly. Blockchain would close what I would call the trust gap. And it would, in essence, allow us to share value real time throughout the world. Certainly when it comes to currency, I've sent Bitcoin transactions for over $1 million worth of Bitcoin, and it took under 3 minutes and cost me like $1.27. I've done $1 million wires that I remember the last wire I did in 2018 that was $1 million. It was Wells Fargo Bank in Wichita, Kansas. They did not have a banker on site that was, I guess, a high enough executive that could sign off on that wire. The wire was going to the United States Treasury. And so, it wasn't like I was sending it to Dubai or somewhere, like say Vietnam or some, North Korea. Like I wasn't sending it to some weird country or some individual. I was literally sending it to the United States government, the US Treasury. And they had to call San Francisco. I guess that's where kind of Wells Fargo is based out of. And it was about 3 hours before I could leave the bank. Now, luckily, I had my phone. I was working most of the time, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But still, it was way better to send, $1 million on the Bitcoin blockchain from my house using my cell phone and just sending it. And in 3 minutes, the whole transaction was complete. Because what's funny, even after the wire was sent, I think it still has to go through the SWIFT, and it probably been the next day before the Treasury even got the funds and was able to use it. But it's just a better way to send value. But imagine not just money, not just fiat. What if it was my health records? What if I controlled my health data, and I could share that data through a blockchain anonymously, and I could get paid if I wanted to share my health data? If enough people shared their DNA data and their health data anonymously, in theory, you could end rare diseases using blockchain technology. You could end voter fraud using blockchain technology. It's trust and transparency. You wouldn't need voter ID. When you registered to vote, you would basically be given a wallet that's a digital wallet. Everyone has a smart TV, a smartphone, but they have a dumb wallet. I still have a dumb wallet I use, but at the end of the day, imagine having a smart wallet that no one could steal from you, and only you could open the wallet. Like, it's not like an old school wallet. Like, you would use biometrics, your face or your fingerprint, and you could open it. So when you register to vote, you're given this smart wallet, and that's the wallet you use to vote. And only you could vote through that wallet. It would be anonymous, but you would know who you voted for. You would be able to go on the blockchain and see who you voted for, and no one else could vote for you. If you Google blockchain voting patent, you can do it right now, whatever. But if you're watching this podcast, the United States Postal Service has had that patent for like over 5 years now, I believe.
Wow.
And yeah, they could end voter fraud, which I think obviously that'd be important to do in the United States. But think about countries like Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Russia, where elections are being rigged, and you could end that overnight. And then literally the society that are in those countries, the people that are the citizens of those countries, would know that the leaders they selected are the leaders that end up in office, versus they know the leader they selected maybe went to prison instead of getting put into office and ended up losing the count on the election. And so the value of blockchain overall for businesses, I think at the end of the day, it will be very difficult for a traditional company to compete with what we'd call a Web3 blockchain-based company because of that trust and transparency.
Wow. That's a huge statement. That means like in the next few years, a lot of businesses, they have to embrace the technology. Otherwise, they are going to be left behind.
Well, I think if they don't, and they're not transparent. I mean, how many times Delta Airlines was buying, carbon credits, and they ended up being credits that were sold 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Well, you can only sell a carbon credit once before it's no good anymore. So they got sued for, billions of dollars for claiming they were net neutral when they bought carbon credits that were no good. Now, if those credits would have been on blockchain, you could trust them, then you would be free to buy them. You would be like, okay, we can pay for these credits because we know they've only been sold once. They've only been sold to us, and no one else can take advantage of that credit. You can look at mining. You can look at data. The platform we're using now is a blockchain-based platform, not to get too far ahead, but Zoom back in 2023 from March through August, and you can Google this as well, Zoom was sharing everyone's data with their AI. And they got caught. Like, people found out, went through their policies and their privacy policy and realized that they were sharing data with their AI. And people got upset, which rightfully so. But there's no real, at that time for sure, there was no real safe haven to run to. You could go to Google Meet. You could go to Microsoft Teams. Google and Microsoft are better mining data than Zoom is. And so here, we start to offer platforms through blockchain where you own and control all your data. And so if you go to the 5.5 billion people that are online and you say, listen, I think society as a whole has conceded to the fact that Mark Zuckerberg has been listening to me and you this whole time. Jeff Bezos is listening to us, Sergey Brin. And I don't mind targeted advertising. Like I'd rather see ads for watches and pickleball paddles than dresses and high heels. But if you gave me a choice that I could control that data, and if I wanted to share that data with advertisers, I could get paid to do it, I'm going to choose to own my data. And I think the 5.5 billion people that are online, if you could say, listen, all your data that's out there that you put out there now belongs to you. It's fully encrypted in a wallet and you're the only one with the private key. And if you decide you want to monetize that data, you can choose to, or you can leave that data in your wallet and it never sees the light of day. I think every single person online, 5.5 billion people, would choose to control their data and be able to monetize it.
The problem that I see is that people, they don't realize that.
Yeah, they don't know. They don't know.
They don't know. When I realize that actually anything what I do online, either I search or I Google or I go ChatGPT, whatever I do online is gonna create some data, right?
Sure.
And that data is monetized by few companies, which means they make billions of dollars just because me, you, and millions and billions of people, they go and use for free a search bar or anything else for free.
For sure.
Billions of dollars. I spoke with some people here and there, and they don't realize how important is that data. And they say, I don't care, until they realize that actually they are making a lot of money just because we use for free some tools.
Well, I think if you pay people, human behavior is not that hard to predict. Like if you incentivize people to do something, they usually do it. If you disincentivize someone from doing something, they usually won't do it. And so, some people are like, I'm kind of similar. Like as far as I should probably care more about my data. I think, what is it? The 23andMe is going bankrupt and they're selling out. And I had an account with them for DNA. I had one with ancestry.com as well. But it's like my wife, I know she took her account down and said, don't share my data. I think I still got to get around to it. Probably by the time I remember to do it, it'll be too late and it'll already be sold. And it's like, I don't care that much. I really don't. Now, if they said, hey man, it's $100,000 if you go do this and take your data off and you can sell that DNA data for even $1,000, I would probably go do it right when we're done. So I have a meeting right when we're done, but after that meeting, it's probably gonna take me 5 minutes, or I'd have my assistant do it or something. I'd be like, hey, go take it down because we make $1,000. I'll give you $100 to do it, like whatever. But it's like, if you monetize something, like I do it. And so I think that's the key, right? Like what's in it for me? That's how the human mind works for the most part. And so can we make it easy for people to monetize their data? And I think the answer is yes. We can do that utilizing blockchain technology. That's probably one of the easiest things. And what really blockchain is built to do is create that data ownership, that trust, that transparency. And then once you understand how simple it would be to monetize that data, I think it's a no-brainer. I think everybody starts to make that shift, which is why I think Web 2 companies are going to have a hard time competing. If all of a sudden you could use a platform as good or better than something like Facebook, or you could use a platform as good or better than something like Zoom. Yep. I think, but you own the data, you get paid to use it, you get rewarded, it's cheaper, it's better. I think everybody, once they know it's an option, starts to choose that option and make that shift.
Yeah, imagine just to take your phone and say, hey, are you still using Facebook or TikTok? Oh, I'm using this app and I'm getting paid. Just because I'm doing the same thing like you do with Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, but I'm just getting paid.
We've developed it's a TikTok killer. It's called Pixar or whatever, but I bought the code for it. But this is like a social selling app. But I think anybody that uses TikTok is well aware that their data is going to China. And so if they used a platform like this, and it's a social selling app, so if this person, let's say they're selling tours to Puerto Rico, and you click, it's in beta now, but you end up buying that tour, and you use your wallet, use your credit card, it turns it into a cryptocurrency and then pays for that trip. I think everyone that's using TikTok, it's like if you had a choice to ship your data to China, because that's where it's going if you're on TikTok, or you control your data and you get paid. If somebody wants to target you with a video and you want to get paid to let them target you, I'd never use TikTok, or I actually don't use TikTok because I know my data would be going to China. And not that I care that much about my data, but I care enough to not want it to go to China. I don't need to get on TikTok. But if I know there's a platform where I control my data and I can get paid for using it, I'll never use it. I think anybody that's using TikTok will shut it down that day. Like, it's over.
Yeah, no brainer.
For sure.
Talking about, you said the Gala game was $40 billion. How can you understand that market cap? Like, when you have a business, like bigger businesses, let's say maybe more important businesses in the world, that probably they didn't have that market cap when Gala was trading for $40 billion a day.
Sure. I mean, there were days.
How can you explain that?
Well, there were days where its market cap, I think in 2021, was higher than Tesla, the Tesla market cap, which again,
what's the logic?
Well, there is no logic, right? Like, that's the crazy thing about the blockchain market. I think all markets are irrational. Like the stock market, Forex markets, like all markets are irrational for sure. That's what creates opportunity. That's what creates, that's why the market's kind of a zero-sum game. You buy high, you sell low, you lose. You buy low, you sell high, you win. But somebody's on the other side of those trades at the same time. Cryptocurrency and blockchain markets are off the charts irrational, much more irrational than traditional markets. And so what you end up with is what I call kind of the speculative bump that a lot of times will overinflate the market cap. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. It is what it is, right? Like,
the reality.
It's reality. And if you were holding Gala tokens and you had 100 million tokens at 80 cents and you were selling all of them at 80 cents, again, you don't care why the market cap is so high. You only care that the market cap is so high. So, you've got this overinflated valuation in a lot of crypto projects. And then you've got a project, I would argue Bitcoin is undervalued. I think it belongs at least at $1 million a coin. And now that's purely speculative. But I think I'm right. Now, I might be wrong, but at the end of the day, I think, I think probably in, 2010, 2014, there's been run-ups with Bitcoin where it was probably, overvalued at that time and people took advantage of it and took profit, and then it crashed back down. It might crash. I think it looks like it's on its way to more and more all-time highs here. Right now we're kind of in a bull run, but eventually I think, the cycle will turn down again and it'll crash down again. And it's like, again, that's purely speculative. But
in your opinion, what makes Bitcoin so valuable?
I think at the end of the day, in its simplest terms, it's kind of what I shared earlier. It's a better way to transfer value, certainly when it comes to a currency, than a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. And again, that's my opinion. I might be right, I might be wrong. I think it's a better way to store value than a bar of gold. If you said, hey, Tony, I'm going to give you a gold bar right now, whatever. I don't know what a gold bar would be worth. I guess I figure out how many ounces. And if it's 10 ounces of gold and gold is $2,000 an ounce, that's 20 grand. If you say, I'm going to give you a gold bar, 10 ounce gold bar or whatever, and it's $20,000,
You better say,
Or
send
what's
me
that?
some Bitcoin.
Yeah,
You
if you
might say,
said
send me some Bitcoin, easier.
if you said, yeah, I'll give you 20 grand worth of Bitcoin, or I'll give you this gold bar that's worth 20 grand. I would say, give me the Bitcoin. And there's a lot of reasons I would say that. Number one, you could give me the Bitcoin within a minute or two. You know, we could do it right now. The gold bar, you're in Chicago, I'm in Kansas, so you need to ship it. Are you going to pay for shipping or am I? So we got to figure that out. If you say you'll pay for it, okay. How are we going to ship it? We better make it like FedEx. We better try and insure it. They're not going to let us insure it for 20 grand. I don't know. That's a little risky, but we got to figure it out one way or the other. Then we better make sure it's signature. Like, I've got to be here. Somebody's got to be here. I don't want you leaving it on the front doorstep. Even though I've got a gated community, it's really nice here. I still don't want to leave 20 grand just sitting out on my porch, right? And so, again, then once I get it, is it real gold? You know, I don't know how to test that. I've got to go find somebody that I trust, a jeweler, and go, hey, is this legit? Is this 18 karat? Is it 24 karat? You know, he told me it's 24 karat. You know, how do you test it? So I've got to trust some third party. And then if somebody said, hey, you know, we want to go, you know, buy a car, you know, I'll take, you know, 10 grand worth of that gold bar. I'm like, do I have a knife in here? How do I cut this? You know, do I cut it right in half? Do I weigh it? You know, how do I give you $10,000 worth of the gold bar, you know? But if somebody said, hey, can you send me 10 grand worth of Bitcoin out of the 20 grand that Mario sent? He's like, yeah, I can do that within about a couple minutes, like real fast. I can do that. And so it's just better. Like, it's a better way to store value and transact than gold is, in my opinion. Again, I might be right, I might be wrong, but I think just common sense. I can tell you right now, objectively, do not send me 20 grand worth of gold. Send me 20 grand worth of Bitcoin. Every time. Anyone that asks me that question, every time my answer is send me Bitcoin. So I'm not saying this in theory. Like, I'm saying it in real life. Send me the Bitcoin, like every single time. And so that's the level of belief I have. It's more valuable than gold right now.
I heard few people that they are selling their real estate buildings portfolio, and they just put everything in Bitcoin because they believe it's easier. They can store in case they need to sell something, they can sell it immediately on the market. If they need to move somewhere, they cannot take the buildings with them. They just take the Bitcoin.
Hey,
And
yeah,
the
I mean,
phrase,
I'm not there yet. You know, I still have, I stay in my properties, so I can't sleep inside Bitcoin or anything like that. But yeah, you know, we still have our property in Kansas. We have a lake house. It's about 3 hours from here in Oklahoma, outside of Tulsa and Grand Lake. And then we have our main house in Puerto Rico that we live most of the year in. And so I have some other real estate. I have oil wells, things like that again, they're cash producing wells, you know. So I still have other assets. I'm not, you know, Bitcoin maxi or whatever. It's like, you know, only hold cryptocurrency. But I think everyone should have a decent portion of their portfolio, 10% of their portfolio in cryptocurrency. And I would say probably 10 to 20% of that I would put in kind of a higher risk asset class in cryptocurrency. And again, that's just me. Everyone's in a different situation. Some people are more risk tolerant than others. You know, somebody that you're talking about that's selling all their real estate and putting into Bitcoin is certainly risk tolerant. You know, people that are more risk averse, you know, certainly wouldn't do something like that. But I would tell most folks, if you're just holding cash, that's far more risky than putting, you know, 10% of those cash holdings into some kind of cryptocurrency, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then maybe taking, you know, a little percentage of that and putting it into different newer projects that maybe have more upside. Bitcoin is definitely the best asset class from 2010 to today. It's outperformed every other asset class, and it's not even close. It's outperformed NVIDIA stock, Tesla stock, Apple stock, gold, silver, oil, gas. Like it's outperformed all commodities, all investments. Like Bitcoin in 2010, if you could have come in till today, you know, 15 years later, there's no asset class even close to as good as the returns you'd get on something like Bitcoin. But that being said, you're probably not going to get that same bump. I think it belongs 10x. There's other people that think it can maybe go 20x, maybe even 50 or potentially 100x from here, which is amazing. Our last project, Gala Games, in 12 months went up 410x. It was like over 41,000%. And over 18 months, I think it was probably closer to 90 some thousand%, over 900x. And so the days of Bitcoin going up 900x are long gone. Like that's done. But there's newer projects in the space, certainly higher risk, but the reward is certainly much higher as well.
For sure. If let's say a business owner, traditional business owner, is listening to us, but he's thinking, okay, how am I going to get involved in blockchain? How am I going to learn? What should I do? Where should I start? What do you recommend?
I mean, what I did really was I went to YouTube. I started getting any type of TED Talk I could find on blockchain technology, and started searching like Web3 blockchain, and I started to educate myself. And I ended up finding a community that actually has like an educational platform it was free to join that community. And so I started utilizing those, resources that were available through a community. I ended up that the same community that created the Gala Games project. I knew it's like, if they're going to give me free education, I was like, I'll take it. I think at the end of the day, the more I learned about Web3 and blockchain, the more excited I got, and the more important it became for me. If you owned Blockbuster video locations around the country, and then you started to hear about Netflix and you used it one time, I think it would only take one time of using it before you'd go, all right, I've got to sell my Blockbusters. Like, I got to get out of here. So,
wow,
sorry. I'm going to move real quick. I'm going to go to my office. Just make a move. Sorry, on a podcast. So, no big deal.
That's very interesting. The example that you just gave, because there are so many businesses that they've been out of business in such a short period of time when the new technology appeared, and I probably that this is going to happen soon with blockchain and AI that will disrupt some industries and some businesses.
Yeah, I think blockchain will be, I know as the World Economic Forum estimated it, that blockchain would disrupt up to $867 trillion in traditional markets. That's not a once in a lifetime number. That's a once number. The shift in the internet, the Web 2 shift wasn't that big. And that was 2021. The World Economic Forum had that estimate. I've heard numbers as recently as like 6 months ago was at 1.3 quadrillion. And so you're talking about literally the biggest shift of wealth in history. And so that's where, as an entrepreneur, you want to educate yourself. You want to position yourself in the middle of that kind of shift. Today, we say, hey, we're involved in blockchain projects. I'm working on a new blockchain project. Just like back in the mid 90s, companies like Google, Yahoo, Amazon, they're an internet company. They're an internet company. Nobody says that anymore. All companies are internet companies. My accounting firm, if you wanted to send us your payroll or your 941 payroll tax statements and stuff, we wouldn't accept it in the mail, or you had an online repository. You would have to load it up onto your online repository. So we were an internet company. Like, if you're not an internet company, you're not a big company right now. You're probably not much of a company. And I truly believe within the next 5 years, I won't have to say, yeah, we're working on a blockchain project or there's a blockchain company. It'll just be a company. You'll just be working on a project, because all projects will be on the blockchain. All companies that are large and worth, kind of going global with are going to be blockchain based companies.
What type of projects do you see that are going to onboard or are going to embrace the blockchain technology sooner and faster? Because so far, probably because of the type of the projects that were involved in cryptocurrency, like all kinds of memes, meme coins, let's say not serious projects, probably that gave a not a good reputation to the technology and the crypto space. Do you see a different type of businesses and projects that are coming and embrace the technology?
Yeah, I think there's certain industries that are going to come faster than others, right? Communications, I think that industry is pretty ripe for disruption and pretty easy to disrupt. I think something like banking is a little more difficult. I know there's projects that are working on decentralizing banking, but you have to kind of live in the current banking system at the same time as you're working to disrupt it. Versus communications, you can kind of go to disrupt right away without needing the existing, the Verizons of the world, the AT&Ts, the Facebooks of the world, the Telegrams, the TikToks of the world. You don't need to get their permission or need to work with them in any way, shape, or form. And so I certainly think there's easier industries to disrupt. But I think when one of the major industries around the world is disrupted by blockchain, it'll be the domino effect. Once one of the easier industries, which I do believe, communications is probably one of the easiest ones. I think you'll start to see many, many more industries end up embracing blockchain, or those companies will get left behind.
What's your focus right now in blockchain?
I mean, the communication side. Yeah, I felt like the lowest hanging fruit, the softest target. The platform we're on, the R-Link platform, is one that I helped bring to the blockchain community for a few reasons. I felt like video conferencing, there was no loyalty in the industry. Prior to getting involved with this project, I would click on whatever link you sent me. I used Zoom. Zoom was kind of my favorite, but I would get on Teams. I would get on Google Meet. I would get on Join.me, GoToWebinar, WebEx, whatever somebody was using that wanted to use it. Sure, I'll click on the link and we'll do our meeting. So I felt like that created opportunity for potential disruption if you've got no loyalty in an industry that's pretty large. I think Zoom's got about 300 million users a day. They're over 50% market share in video conferencing. And I felt like there were 4 ways we could attack them. 2 on the business side, pricing and presentation. And then on the blockchain side, data ownership, which we've discussed quite a bit already, owning your data, controlling your data, and then rewarding, being able to, we're on your R-Link, you're probably earning cryptocurrency because we're on your platform doing meetings. And if you share the platform with others, you earn more digital rewards, and it's seamless. Mom can swipe her credit card, put her credit card in, and it takes the $10 off her credit card, and it goes into a decentralized exchange and buys the token out of the market. She doesn't even need to know it's happening. So how do you make it as an entrepreneur? The real holy grail here is, how do you bring customers into the blockchain without them even knowing they're coming into the blockchain? It just makes their lives better. My mom doesn't know what HTML is or an SSL certificate, but she can watch shows on Netflix. She can check her email, check her bank statement, pay her credit card bill. She can do all that using the internet. It makes her life more efficient, more entertaining. What blockchain does for her by using a platform like this instead of Zoom, gives her data, lets her own and control her data, lets her monetize her data, and then it allows her to share her data, to share the platform, and get rewarded and basically earn for doing that. And Zoom is never going to, 1, let you own your data and control it, and 2, they're never going to pay you for using and sharing the platform with others. And so blockchain gives us a huge advantage in a marketplace that, again, has not hardly any loyalty. Our users are fiercely loyal. Like somebody wanted to get me on the Zoom the other day, and they were like, "Hey, can we just use Zoom with this one?" I was like, "Nope, let's use my link." And they're like, "Okay." There was no pushback. They're like, "Hey, can we do a Zoom?" I was like, "Yeah, we can use my link." Okay, no problem.
Since I discovered this platform, I never use Zoom. I canceled my subscription because it's like no-brainer. It's like amazing. It works perfect. And like you said, gives your data, your privacy is important. It's your privacy plus the other advantages. Tony, I really want to thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us here. For sure, we are going to have you another time talking more about it. But I want to say again, thank you so much, because we learned so much. Personally, I learned so much from you, And I'm looking forward to work with you with different other projects that you are leading the way. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Marius. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, I'm sure that hopefully this will be the first of many times we get to chat together.
Awesome. Thank you so much.